I mean, I would book a flight, but
That's what we do.
Yeah.
Someone was like, no, don't.
yeah, but it seems like it's pretty solid. Yeah.
Alright.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Senate Education.
Hi.
How are you? Remind me your name?
Rebecca Brown.
Great. Are you on our list?
No.
Oh, okay. You're just here. Great. Stephanie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So I think Senator Gulick had asked for a couple of witnesses to talk about H 630 and act relating to boards of cooperative education services, what's known as the BOCES bill, which will pass out hopefully next week. But we thought we'd get a little bit more information, and I'll turn it over to Senator Gulick in a minute, because I think as I understand it, as it was explained to me by Senator Gulick, there are some districts doing this kind of work. Some of it's happening, a lot of it's happening organically, and we're asking ourselves, hey, is this needed at this point, not needed? So if you wouldn't mind taking us through what's happening in Wyndham. And I think you probably know your Senator Hashim. I don't know if you know Senator Gulick.
Nope.
And then we have Senator Williams over here, Senator Weeks, and I'm Brian Campion. Great to see you.
You as well. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay,
Go.
so do you want me to kind of like outline the processes that that we have gone through and why we are, even though we are working organically from startup, that we still support the BOCES bill? Would that be helpful, or do you guys want to ask specific questions?
Going to tee you up better than I did, so.
Yeah, thank you. I honestly wasn't even sure if you did support the BOCES bill or not. But I saw your great website, your Vermont Learning Collaborative website, which seems fantastic, and the work that you guys are doing seems great. So I thought it would be interesting for us to hear what processes you had to go through to get to where you are, and also, like really like how onerous was it, how much work, how difficult, and why you think the BOCES, if it sounds like you think the BOCES is a good idea, why you think it's a good idea. That'd be great.
Perfect. So basically, this has been an almost 6-year process. I've been involved for the last 2 years, but literally has been 6 years since the former board of the Vermont Learning Collaborative started to approach the superintendent group to see if they were interested in taking it over as they were retiring. And so it was already an established 501c3 nonprofit. So we had that advantage, and we also had the advantage of some liquid assets. I wouldn't say it was a huge amount of money, but it was a great start. So I think the challenges that we've encountered are, most of us are, 99% of us are volunteers. And so we're doing this either outside of working hours or with our superintendent's permission to participate. I think as the board president, I've probably spent the most time organizing and keeping things rolling along. And I would say a huge amount of volunteerism is required to do this. We were very fortunate to reach out to DMG a couple of years ago to start the process of like, if we're going to take this over, how would we hire an executive director? What would this look like? And so we reached out to them, and they were not interested at the time, but let us know about New Solutions K-12, which, if you guys know, Nate Levinson, who participated in the DMG studies in Vermont, he is one of the owners of New Solutions K-12. So he was familiar with Vermont, so we lucked out with that. And his company helped us do a feasibility study, and then helped us with the search for an executive director, which was really a national search. So I would say the processes have been challenging at best, and I think the overarching summary that I'd like you guys to know is like, where there's a will, there's a way. But it's very reliant on certain people. And I think you guys know as well as I do that systems work better, and that when it's person reliant, it has a high chance of failure. I think we have the right people involved right now, and we're lucking out with that. But again, saying luck. We've already had several board members shift out and new ones come in. Just in the last 3 weeks, 2 more are going to need to shift out and, and get more people in. So there's an ever-changing, board, and it feels like every time that happens, we have to start from scratch, where we feel like, if the BOCES bill were to pass, there would be much more supervisor union and school district involvement right from the get-go, in a different way, where right now it's really relying on certain people. So I think time inefficiencies should be outlined, just the maintenance of the 501c3 status from a state or federal, regulation process. Insurance, whether that be looking at directors and officers insurance, to employee health and dental kind of benefits. It's, we're dipping into the process of starting up some programs for students, and now working with private insurance companies to try to get, the right kind of coverage, and all of these kinds of things, including banking, bookkeeping, accounting, filing for taxes, creating invoices, tracking all these things. These are all things that take us from the actual product of helping students and supervisor unions in school districts. And so I think that's where it gets a little frustrating, but the heart is here. Like Kim and I and the rest of the board, we work very hard and are dedicated to making this happen, because we all recognize we were duplicating efforts as supervisor unions anyway. And we are all seeking the same kind of staff, sometimes competing for the exact person. So we felt like it was necessary. And so we found all these different ways to go about it. But I would definitely not say it was without challenges. I also think that we are in Vermont pretty out of alignment with other states. We're one of a very small number of states who don't have a BOCES. And part of the challenge around that is that we've had to create everything as we've gone through, like even including bylaws, processes, adopting Robert's rules, those kinds of things. And we've still found challenges with going after grant funds because we're not affiliated with a supervisor union or school district. So we think we could be much more successful with, backing with BOCES, and we would probably bring the Vermont Learning Collaborative down to what I'd say is very bare bones, and maintain this side of it that could be like a fiscal agent for supervisor unions for certain grants and things that a school district or supervisor union could not get. So I don't want to be dismal. We are going to keep working no matter what. But I just want to say that I am in full support of the BOCES bill, and I think we can learn a lot from other states who have gone through this. Sorry, I've got reminders happening here. And I think it would be great to hear from Kim Oliveira. She's our executive director and has extensive knowledge and experience of CREST Collaborative and other collaboratives in Massachusetts. And we can learn a lot from her experience as well.
Yes, Senator Rashid.
Thank you for the testimony, Stephanie. Before we move on, I just wanted to clarify or confirm something. So regarding administrative burdens, that's a question that we've been grappling with. There's the question of, will this reduce burdens? Will it increase burdens? Or will it stay the same? And from what I gathered, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like going the route of doing a 501c3 is a bit more burdensome than trying to do a BOCES. Is that accurate? Or
yes, and that's because I think, as far as like administrative kinds of tasks and things like that, I think school districts and supervisor unions are already doing a lot of these kinds of pieces. And I also think that, even just an overarching benefits package and overarching coverage for buildings, those kinds of things through BizBid or whatever agency schools use would be automated. And so we wouldn't have to be shopping insurance agencies and trying to figure out what's the best pathway for those. And while doing that, figuring out what we actually need for coverage. Like, we are not insurance agents. So we're trying to like map out, what we need, what kind of coverage, what kinds of policies. And then, you know, depending on how many employees there are and how many hours they work, what benefits they'd be eligible for. So under a supervised union or school district, there would be some existing structures in place. And I think we could also attract more employees that way as well.
Awesome. Thank you. That's helpful.
Great. You wanna pick up from there, Kim?
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. As Stephanie mentioned, I am coming to Vermont after 28 years of public education experience in Massachusetts. The past 11 of those years were as a executive director of a public collaborative in Massachusetts. So it kind of goes without saying that I am here to fully support the BOCES bill. My lure to Vermont in the first place was really because I saw the great need for regionalized educational services in the state and the great opportunity to do so. And although we had talked about, you know, at some point there may be an opportunity for these agencies to become public, I really thought it was 3 to 5 years down the road. So I was pleasantly just surprised to see the BOCES bill much quicker than I had anticipated. In Massachusetts and in many other states, collaboratives are public entities with oversight and compliance measures from the Department of Education. And I do see a great need to start this initiative across the state. And what better way to begin than proactively with a strong plan for consistency and compliance and accountability that these regulations would provide. Almost all states have some sort of regional educational agency, and the need for these specialized programs and services just continues to grow. My question that I would pose back to the group would be, why wouldn't you want to move forward? More so than the questions that have been asked to us. If you know that there's a great need for regional partnerships across the state, and you have the opportunity as a group to lead and guide and ensure implementation with fidelity, I would hope that you would seize that opportunity. It is crucial to implement this bill, in my opinion, to develop a system and structure for school unions to follow to ensure that our most vulnerable populations are being served by an agency that is held accountable by the standards set by the Department of Education or outlined in this bill. Many of the regional service agencies are extensions of school unions, and putting these regulations in place would allow Vermont to ensure that there's consistency from the setup, that there's consistency in structure, and those compliance measures are outlined for everyone and put into place immediately. Without this structure, the state may find themselves years down the road needing to regain control of existing grassroots agencies. I would assume that we're not the only ones thinking of doing this endeavor, and that others will crop up across the state as time goes on. You only need to look east to see that Massachusetts added articles of agreement very similar to what you have in front of you in the BOCES bill in 2012 in order to hold the 26 collaboratives in Massachusetts across the state to a higher set of compliance standards. Adding these regulations after these agencies had been in place for over 50 years was quite cumbersome and sometimes confusing. We got it done. But certainly if we were to have the opportunity to do it again, I think those regulations would have been put into place much sooner or at the onset. So in closing, I would encourage you to seize the opportunity to pave the pathway for regional service agencies in Vermont by approving this bill and ensuring that our high-need students and families are truly receiving the highest quality of services when a school union is unable to secure their own. And they are doing everything they can to secure those resources on their own. However, the need far outweighs what they are able to provide at this time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, please, Senator Gulick.
That was great testimony. Thank you so much. It helped fill in some gaps for me.
Great.
Couple quick questions. Just to answer, Kim, your question about why wouldn't we do this? I guess some of the things I've been hearing, one is that maybe the AOE doesn't have the capacity to do this. And I'm still unclear as to what their role would be in the BOCES. So that would be my first question, if you want to speak to that.
Sure. I mean, I would think that just having the structure in this bill in place allows school unions to form these regional agencies with some sort of structure, with some sort of consistency. And over time, the Department of Education, as it evolves, would have more and more insight, oversight, I would think, into these agencies, because the school unions or the LEAs are responsible for these students. First and foremost, they would still have some hand in that oversight. The second part of your question, I'm sorry, I missed what that was.
I think that was it, just about the AOE having the capacity to do the work. Yeah.
I think the capacity question too, there's a great opportunity for regional service agencies to help with the lack of capacity that the DOE may have. And when I say that, very oftentimes regional service agencies are the conduit for rolling out initiatives across the state. So whatever that initiative might be, having that partnership between the DOEs and the regional service agencies really helps to facilitate whatever it is they're trying to push forward with minimal impact on their, existing resources, which may be shallow.
Okay, great. And my second question, which I think came out of this committee, was the fear that we're adding like this whole like giant layer of bureaucracy into the mix, and that is cumbersome. Can you speak to that at all?
I don't find it to be, what's been cumbersome has been the setup components that Stephanie talked about. Having an existing agency that is a phone call away from a school union to pick up, to give us a call and say, I'm really struggling with this specific student need, or this specific resource, or this specific staffing, or whatever it is that we're providing. Or, we're really low on funds this year. What are some ways that we can utilize cooperative purchasing from the collaborative to help us save money with supplies that we have to purchase anyway? So the purpose, the goal of these regional service agencies is to not create additional work or to be cumbersome in any way, but rather to ease the burdens that our already strapped school unions are facing.
Great. And did I hear you say that creating the 501c3 and working in that arena is kind of cumbersome? Did I hear that?
Yeah,
It has been.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And if we had to start it from scratch, it would have been even more cumbersome. It's sometimes a 1 to 2 year process to be able to get yourself established in that way. And I would just add to what Kim said about, regarding the cumbersome regulatory pieces of it. I feel like it's really the opportunity to set up a professional kind of entity and regulations around it so that it is equitable for all students to have and school districts and supervisor unions to have access to things in a equal access kind of way. So I think it really promotes a standard of excellence instead of a basic kind of entity. And I think when you have the terminology of BOCES, everybody would have this kind of general understanding of what it is.
Awesome.
So, thank you for your testimony. I'm speaking for myself now, but this is all new. It was similar to the way we worked on CTE. And what we decided to do in this committee was to break it up into 2 sections, governance, and we'll deal with the financial part of it later. I think maybe the problem I have is that just a lack of understanding of how the governance of this would work. If the Agency of Education is going to be the head of the pyramid to govern the BOCES, or if they're just going to be directive in nature, if they're going to actually hold people responsible. And it may just be that we don't understand the process. Can you talk to that at all?
Kim, do you want to talk about how it is in Massachusetts or how it was?
Well, sure. The BOCES bill, as I read it, leaves the governance component to the school unions. So each school union would appoint a representative to the board of directors. So each of these collaboratives would have a board of directors that governs the activities, the financials, everything that happens within that entity.
We have 7 BOCES districts. So how do they do it in Massachusetts?
So in Massachusetts, there are 25 different collaboratives. Each collaborative is run the same way by a board of directors that are appointed from each of the school districts that are a member of that collaborative. So they establish membership first and foremost, and each one of those members will appoint a superintendent or a school committee member to sit as part of the board.
So how did you get around, how did you make sure you didn't have 25 different organizations working in different directions?
So in Massachusetts, these entities had been around for about 50 or 60 years. And so
Wow.
they had initial articles of agreement back when they all started. And the genesis of the organization's start was really around students that needed programming that the school districts couldn't provide. And so they started to pop up or crop up throughout the state with that in mind. And then over time, each entity sort of grew in different ways based on the needs, to be responsive to the needs of the school districts that they were providing for. In 2012, the articles of agreement that pretty much mirror the BOCES bill that you have in front of you, those articles of agreement came into place in an effort to try to uniform the 26 collaboratives a little bit more, to provide a little bit more oversight and accountability, because the state had run into an issue with a private nonprofit and a public nonprofit sort of operating together under the umbrella of a collaborative. And so we learned a lot during that unfortunate time. And so these articles of agreement came into place to sort of prevent those kinds of things from happening. But as far as the governance piece, to me, I like a good rule. I like to have a roadmap to follow, and I like there to be accountability checkpoints. I think that just is for the betterment of all students.
Right.
And we are talking about our most vulnerable population. So I think it's important.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. So, thank you, Stephanie and Kim. The testimony is hugely insightful. Very much appreciated. I wanted, though, to get a sense of scale in the Massachusetts experience. First on, if you could just give an average, and it doesn't need to be a perfect number, but just an average on, like, how many students would a single BOCES in Massachusetts serve, and how many students would a supervisory union in Massachusetts serve? Just kind of give us just a sense of what you guys are dealing with.
Well, the school districts in Massachusetts vary from as small as 500 to as large as, hundreds of thousands of students, depending on the cities. Our collaborative that I work for, Crest Collaborative in Andover, Massachusetts, we had about 270 students enrolled in our programs, with probably another 270 waiting for programming as well. Not all of the collaboratives provide student programming. Some collaboratives provide professional development only or online schooling only. There are, some collaboratives provide transportation, some do not. And so I think that speaks to the need to not necessarily duplicate efforts across the state, but make sure that everyone across the state has access to other collaboratives. So for example, if the Southeast Collaborative is providing transportation, we're doing it really well, maybe the Central Vermont Collaborative doesn't need to do the same thing. They can utilize our services from Southern Vermont. Or maybe the northern part of the state has a professional development entity that is really strong, really robust, and there's no need to sort of reinvent the wheel because these trainings can be attended virtually. So perhaps the southern portion of the state would take part in utilizing their services. So I also see the opportunity for sort of that cross, the ability for any of these entities that start in Vermont to be able to utilize one another for resources, because the geography is very different in Vermont than it is in Massachusetts.
Thank you.
So we've got, Vermont's small like Massachusetts, but you've got a lot more people and a lot more students. So one of the concerns I would have if I were a local bus company and everybody decided that, hey, these guys are cheaper, we're gonna go with them, you're gonna be crowding out maybe some local organizations or businesses. Did you have a problem with that? Or I don't wanna see a monopoly come in and crowd any businesses out.
I think what collaboratives do best, or who they serve best, I'll take my experience at Crest. I had some very small school districts as part of, 5,000 student school districts as part of my collaboratives, but I had large cities like Lowell and Lawrence. I think who we served best were those smaller geographical regions who didn't have, a cohort of students within their own school union to be able to create a program. So it made more sense for them, from the geography standpoint, to partner with 2 or 3 other districts and send their students to us to have a real similar peer cohort together. As far as, taking over other businesses, there is such a great student need across any state right now, but certainly from what I've seen across Vermont. And we need everybody that we could get to come to the table to help these students. So I don't foresee any collaborative coming in and taking the place of, small town businesses or things like that. If anything, we might need to lean on them as a resource to help provide services for a greater population of students, whether it be transportation or therapy services, et cetera.
And I'll just quickly add, so Wyndham Central Supervisor Union is where I'm the Director of Student Services, and we've had to purchase in the last few years 4 vehicles. We know the regulations around like what needs a Class B license versus a regular license. We've become experts at tire rotation and, when oil changes need to happen, and gas cards, and having to, have a very fast turnaround with credit cards for that because of being a supervisor union, can't have that much out there. So it has been, basically we've had to create solutions ourselves and do all of that research and do cost benefit analyses, those kinds of things where a collaborative could be managing all of those small places so that I don't have to be, up at night thinking, oh my gosh, did I get the right license for this person? Did I do the right checks? So I think it wouldn't be, as Kim said, I don't anticipate any severe competition with any of the local entities. And I think so many needs are unmet right now because we're small. There's not a lot of places or opportunities around. So
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, I think just one of the things too that I'm finding in Vermont is, a district may have a need for a highly specialized position, whatever it may be, maybe a speech and language therapist or a teacher of the visually impaired. They have this need, but they're unable to find somebody that's able to do a 0.1 or a 0.2 position or a very, very part-time position. And so they end up having to hire on staff somebody working at a higher number of hours that's not necessarily needed, but it's the only way to have that resource on board. What the collaborative can do is they can say, you know what, I'm hiring a full-time school psychologist. Your district needs a 0.2 of that. Another district needs a 0.4 of that. Another district needs, X. And therefore, there's a cost effectiveness involved with utilizing your regional resources in order to get those services and supports that you need without having to hire them on your own staff. So there's a financial impact here that's very positive.
Good point.
You didn't ask the question, but I thought you should hear that.
So, yeah, okay.
Great. Anything else?
No.
Sorry, Ashim, you okay?
I'm good. Great. Thank you.
Good, it's really helpful.
It was.
Nice job. Appreciate everything you're doing. Appreciate you taking the time.
Likewise, and if you guys have any other questions, feel free to email us or contact us. We'll be happy to answer any other questions. All right.
Beautiful.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you
Have a
very
good day.
much. Bye.
Anybody want to hear from anybody else on this bill before we go to next week? Okay. Or you want to put it up probably Tuesday. And then Beth's schedule is in flux a little bit, but she's gonna pop in at 2:30. Why don't we go off and take a look at this